Thank you so much, all of you, for having me here today. Welcome to the class of 2016. Thank you very much for letting me share this great day with you. Was it a great year? Yeah. Great year? I hope so. You know, I had a pretty good year myself. I went to see David Ortiz at Fenway Park, and he donated one of his signature bats for one of my charities. I made the trip to Denver for the AFC Championship game and commiserated with Gronk after they lost. I hung out with Kobe Bryant at the Four Seasons Hotel, his final trip to Boston to play the Celtics. I talked to Carly Lloyd. We decided we might do a book together. I got invited to dinner at A-Rod's house in Miami. Do not worry, I did not go. I took a picture with Bill Russell. And I did that because he told me to, and I'll do anything he wants. Come up and see me afterwards. I do have it in my phone. I have a great job. I have a job that most of you would probably kill for. But please don't do that. I come in peace. I've been to 48 out of the 50 states thanks to my job. I still haven't gotten to Nebraska or North Dakota. I've been to 7 countries and 4 continents. And my job is one that every single one of you graduates can do. I'm sure of it. It's the only job I ever wanted, and I knew that from the first time I was in the 5th grade, and Mr. Pender took us on a field trip to the Honeywell computer plant. Now, back then, computers were bigger than refrigerators. Ask your parents. They remember this. They were huge. You could barely fit them in a room. And I was just absolutely mesmerized. And on the bus ride back, Mr. Pender said to me, you know, you should write about this. I said, okay. And so I did. And somehow, Mr. Pender convinced the Westwood Press to put it on the very last page of the paper. Well, I was hooked. I loved the smell of ink. I still do. And I guess I was a little vain because I really liked seeing my name, spelled wrong, unfortunately, in that newspaper. So I know what you're thinking. This is where I launch into my plucky, obnoxious go-getter who takes on the world and is everybody's darling, except for that really wasn't me. I had tons of hopes and dreams, but I was afraid to do any of them. Every time I read the local sports paper, I'd get really mad because all they ever wrote about was the boys. So I'd stomp around the house and I'd flail my arms and complain about the unfairness of it. And finally, one day my dad said to me, why don't you do something about it? Why don't you call the paper and ask them why they don't write about the girls? And I said, well, sure, I'm going to do that later. I'll do that later. And my dad said, no, you're going to do it now. I'm really tired of listening to you. So with my dad standing over me, I called up the local paper and, of course, lost all my nerve and said, geez, I was just sort of wondering why you don't write about the girls. And the editor, Frank Wall, said to me, I don't have anybody do it. You want to do it? I said, I'm in the 7th grade. He said, if it stinks, I won't print it. Do you know how long I stayed up to make sure it didn't stink? A long time. So now suddenly I'm writing about sports. I can't even believe it. And sometimes, if you can believe this, I'm writing about myself because I got to high school and I made the field hockey team. So that was pretty cool. Except for I almost didn't try out for the team because I was afraid. The mere thought of showing up at that field just put this pit in my stomach. So my next door neighbor and my best friend, Maria, asked me when the tryouts were. Now, Maria was a flautist. She was not an athlete. For those of you, you all know, you're very smart. She played the flute. She was a flautist. She was not an athlete. She said she'd go with me to these tryouts. She was 4'11", and she could barely walk in a straight line without tripping. But God bless her. She went to those tryouts with me because she knew I'd never go alone. The very first day, Maria got cut, and I made the team. Now, my true love, of course, was a game of basketball. Oh, I loved it so much. I couldn't stop thinking about it. But at the time, my high school, Westwood High School, had a winning streak that, believe it or not, was actually in the Guinness World Book of Records. Now, this was a tryout that Maria was not coming to with me. I was going to have to go by myself. So I laced up my Chuck Taylors, because you know what? We actually wore those to play basketball back when I was young, okay? I laced them up, and I peeked into the gym where everybody was lining up for the tryouts, and I chickened out. I didn't do it. I couldn't do it. Next year, I told myself, I'll go next year. But then next year came, and I couldn't do it then either. So now I'm a junior in high school, and it's too late. It's too late. I've missed it. The game I love so much, and I don't have enough courage to play. So I run into the coach one day. Her name is Kathy Delaney Smith. She's now going to be a Hall of Famer. She's the coach at Harvard now, but she was my high school coach. How lucky was I? And she stopped me in the hallway, and she said, "Oh, I was down at the junior high school today. I saw your sister Susie. She's going to be a great player." She said, "At least I'll get one MacMullan to play for me." So I said, "Oh, well, I'll try out." And the look of horror on her face, I will never forget it. And I said, "Oh, you're right. It's too late. I'm too old. Gosh, I'm sorry. Never mind. Forget I said that." And she said, "Wait a minute. You wanted to play? All this time you wanted to play?" She said, "Oh, my goodness. Be here tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. We have a lot of work to do." So thanks to Kathy Delaney Smith, I made the team, the junior varsity, the only junior on junior varsity. I was okay with that. I didn't know what I was doing. But by the end of the year, because you know what? Once I got on that team, I never stopped, never stopped. By the end of the year, I got moved up for the tournament. I got to play. It was so exciting. And my senior year, I was on the floor at the very end of the game in the state championship, missing the very last shot of the game. But that's okay. You know why? Because I was part of a team. And it felt fantastic, just fantastic. And all of you here, every one of you knows that feeling, don't you? Every one of them, whether you're on the football team or the soccer team or theater or dance, you know what it feels like to belong. And can I just tell you one thing? Hold on to that feeling in case this is the last time you ever have it, because it's the greatest. It's carried me all the way through my life. So anyway, I'm part of that team. Now, meanwhile, my high school journalism career, it's going pretty well, I got to tell you. It's going pretty well. In fact, my boss said to me, "How about if you write a weekly sports column?" And I was pumped. I'm like, "That's great," except for I was terrified. So I convinced my friend Janice to do it with me. Now, by this time, I'm reading about 4 or 5 newspapers a day. My dad was a salesman, so he would bring them to me from all over the country. So I wanted to sound professional if I was going to write this sports column. So I started calling everybody by their last name in the stories, because I knew that's what all the real journalists did. Now, meanwhile, Janice, my friend, she could care less about being a journalist. She just loved everyone and everything. So as you can imagine, our sports columns that we were doing together, they were a little uneven, right? So here's how I would do it. I would start out with, "The Lawrence Academy hockey team eked out a 2-1 win yesterday thanks to a goal from Hannah Gelfie." Are you here, Hannah? Come on, Hannah, stand up. I mentioned you. You might as well stand up. There we go. So then my friend Janice would kick in, and she'd write something like, "The game was awesome!" Exclamation point. "The fans had great cheers!" Exclamation point. "That Brittany Colton played so well, she's a doll." Where are you, Brittany? Stand up. You might as well. Come on, Brittany. "Everyone shared the ball and the win happened!" Exclamation point. So needless to say, I did not include those columns in my college applications. But anyway, I went to the University of New Hampshire, and I wasn't a walk-on there. I was a crawl-on. But my coach, Kathy Delaney Smith, had already called ahead. She told him I was coming. I had to try out. I couldn't bag it. She was expecting me to try out, so I did, and I made the team. I still don't really know how. I made the team, and by my sophomore year, I was actually a starter, and I even got a little bit of scholarship money. And it was there, on that team again, that great feeling of being part of a team, I made some of my lifelong friends. One of them who's here today, Denise Higgins, whose daughter, Gabby Reuter, graduates with you today. Stand up, Gabby. You didn't think you were going to get off this easy. All right. But as Gabby's mom can tell you, I was never going to be a professional basketball player. You simply can't be in that one shooting left-handed the way I did with the one-handed. Oh, it was horrible. But anyway, I wasn't going to be a professional basketball player, but I wanted to be a professional journalist. And I told everybody who listened that that's what I was going to do. When I get out of here, I'm going to work for the Boston Globe. Except for one of my older, wiser teammates finally said one day, "You know, you talk an awful lot about that, but you really don't do anything about it." And she was right. Because, once again, I was afraid. I was afraid to walk down to the student activities office and join the school newspaper. But I was so lucky because my professor, Don Murray, who was a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner, understood. In fact, he told me he had the same problem when he was my age. So you know what he did? He said, "Come on, we'll walk down to the school paper together." And then when we got to the door, he said, "I'm out. Now get in there." My guess is that each one of you have someone in your life that believed in you even more than you believed in yourself. And I'm not talking about your parents, I'm talking about somebody else. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do, if I can. Next week, when all the hoopla dies down about this great graduation, whoever that person is in your life, sit down and write them a little note, just to thank them. I'm not talking text in here, people. I'm not talking Snapchatting. Sit down and write a note, okay? And you know what? I bet you're going to like it as much as the person you write that letter to. I was very, very fortunate to have so many caring people looking out for me. When I got out of UNH, I did work right at the Boston Globe my first year out of college. And when I got there, all sorts of crazy things happened to me. Most nights, I was the only woman in the building, the only woman covering the game. Some people were glad I was there, but quite honestly, many others were not. I was in a New York Giants locker room once when Lawrence Taylor threw a hairdryer at me. Lawrence Taylor is a super big dude. Thankfully, he has lousy aim. Okay. I had a priest who was only up to my waist stand in front of the St. John's locker room with his arms folded, forbidding me to go in and do my job, and he stood there until my deadline passed. I had Red Auerbach, the patriot of the Boston Celtics, who in later years was one of my most ardent supporters, take his cigar and blow that smoke right into my face when he found out I went into his locker room. You know, in those early years, my life was kind of stressful. I wasn't trying to break down barriers. I was just trying to get through the day, honestly. I was just trying to do my job. And being afraid, you know what? It really wasn't going to do me any good, because that was only going to be a sign of weakness to those who wanted me to fail. So when I cried, and I did it alone in my car where nobody could see me. And then, when I got back to work, I started trying to build my credibility one story at a time. So along the way, I saw the Red Sox win the World Series. I saw the Bruins win the Stanley Cup. I saw the Celtics raise banner 17, and I saw the Patriots become a football dynasty. I won $10 off Isaiah Thomas because he didn't think I could hit a turnaround jump shot. And I'm not talking about little Isaiah Thomas from the Celtics. I'm talking about the one from the Pistons. I swam in Shaq's pool with another Lawrence Academy alum, Nicky Lynch. He swam in, there he is, back there, Nicky. There he is, here today. He's in the house. I swam in Shaq's pool and I posed with his stuffed polar bear. I shot baskets with Maya Moore. I flew a kite in Larry Bird's backyard. I tied the shoes of Tom Brady's son. That's what I said. And I humiliated my poor children by doing the flick of the wrist on national television. I got to work at Sports Illustrated, and then I got to work at ESPN. So now I'm on television, I'm on the radio, I write for the website, and truthfully, I'm probably a little overexposed. But you know what? I'm going to tell you something. I'm not afraid of anything anymore. All right, well, thank you. Maybe one little thing when I write bad things about Bill Belichick and he starts coming at me. That's a little scary. So you're about to take the next step, all of you, to college, to work, maybe some of you, and it's scary. And you're probably afraid, and I get it. I totally get it. But if I could tell you one thing, it's this. Don't be the kid peeking in the door. Be the kid that walks through the door. When I was young, I used to see all these adults who seemed so confident and so brave, and I thought, well, you know what? They were born that way. No, they weren't. The most successful people in the world were all kids like you once. They were high school graduates who were dealing with the anxiety and the uncertainty and the excitement of what's ahead. Our presidents, our CEOs, our professional athletes, our top scholars, Mr. Miranda, probably too, I'm going to guess, and our sports journalists, we were all the same. We had no idea what was next. But if you are too afraid to find out, you'll never know. Congratulations. Enjoy this wonderful day.